Ignition has the ability to scale tags that come from a PLC. It's very possible, for as an example, that your PLC doesn't support floating points. So in order to actually store a floating point value in the PLC, you might have to scale that up to an integer. And then when you bring it back to Ignition, you don't want users to see integers. You want to see them. You want to see that value as a float. So let's say, for example, I take this N7:110 tag from my MicroLogix into Ignition. You see the value is integer. It's 8,659. But I really want that value in here to be 86.59 as a float. So we can right-click on the tag and edit and click on the numeric tab. That allows us to actually configure the scaling and deadband facilities of a tag. Right now the scaling is turned off, so it's just getting the raw value from the PLC. But if I wanted to, I can set it to a linear scale mode, a square root scale mode, and an exponential filter scale mode. So typically you select linear, where you are scaling between a raw low and high and a scale low and high. So what Ignition is going to do is set up the actual calculations behind the scenes to scale that value appropriately. So for my example, if I want to make this 8,659 86.59, I'll need to set my raw low to 0, my raw high to 1,000, my scale low to 0, and my scaled high to 10. And what we're doing here is setting up a way of actually dividing that value by 100. So as soon as I do that, I'm going to go ahead and press apply. You're going to see that the value is now coming in as 87, which isn't quite right because the value was 8,659. So it was supposed to be 86.59. What Ignition did is it simply rounded the value up because the data type of the tag is integer 2. So what's really important here is that if you're using scaling, that the data type of the tag must match the data type of the scale value. So if I want this to be a floating point, I need to go back to the General tab of my tag and set the data type to be a float. As soon as I do that, I should have the appropriate 86.59 value. You'll also notice that little calculator icon to the right of the tag letting you know that scaling is set up. So if I take this tag N7:110 and drag it here as a second one, so I can see the raw value here. What's nice about Ignition scaling is it not just works for bringing the value from the PLC to Ignition. If I was to actually go and change the value on N7:110 up here, the one that's scaled, to say 65.23, Ignition will scale it automatically back to the PLC, and I will see in the PLC 6,523. So we do scale it both ways. So it's up to you and which scaling you want to use. All of the actual functions, the actual mathematical functions we're using here are available in the user manual, so you can see exactly what these modes are intended to do. There's one other thing that we can do on these on scaling, and that is the clamp mode. There are often times where when you scale the value, you don't want the value to be higher or lower than the scale low and high. So if you wanted to, you could clamp it. So in my case, it doesn't make so much sense, but if I clamp my value here on both ends, I will see that the value here will be represented as 10 because the 65 is higher than 10, so I'll need to make sure that that's the highest it could possibly be. So now you'll see it as 10. So all these facilities are available to you. It just matters if you want to take advantage of them.